Ray Nagin Jr., the former mayor of New Orleans, was convicted this week of 20 counts of corruption, taking home the award for being the first mayor of the city's 296-year history to be found guilty of corruption. Nagin was the mayor before, during, and after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. We now know that he told people who wanted to help clean up the aftermath that they had to pay him first. Here to discuss is Lew Rockwell, founder and chairman of the Mises Institute. Lew, what this man has done is really shocking. Katrina caused $135 billion in damages in New Orleans, and 1,800 people died across the Gulf Coast. While the city was in chaos, Nagin accepted close to $500,000 in bribes in exchange for city contracts. What drives a politician to accept these kind of kickbacks at the expense of their community?
Well, because he's a politician. I mean, it's actually not shocking at all. I mean, this is municipal government in America. I'd argue it's other kinds of government, too. All these cities are corrupt. The mayors are corrupt. They all take bribes. This is the way the cities run, the town councilman. It's really not shocking at all that Ray Nagin is corrupt, just like other big city mayors. The question to me is, why was he singled out? Because, of course, he's corrupt. Of course, he was taking bribes. And before I get into why I think he was singled out, I actually argue this is preferable to an ideological mayor like, say, Bill de Blasio, who thinks of himself as some kind of semi-Leninist and what he wants to do to New York City. You don't want that kind of mayor. You want the kind of mayor who's concentrating on lining his pockets, paying off his friends, and so forth. That's a far less harmful practice than the socialists and the fascists that we, Rahm Emanuel in Chicago and so forth. Those kinds of guys are far more dangerous. But I think what happened, why did Nagin get singled out? You always have to ask the question, since the corruption is so endemic, why does a guy like that get singled out? My guess is that he offended somebody in FEMA or some other federal agency who was capable of saying, go get this guy.
Well,
we all knew he was corrupt. They're all corrupt.
Well, while it is
Detroit is corrupt. New York. I mean, this is municipal government. Small towns and cities are corrupt too. I don't want to shock anybody's civics class version of government. This is the way they all are.
Well, while it is true that there were many people that were responsible for what happened in New Orleans during Katrina, but Nagin faces up to 20 years in prison, and he was the only person responsible. But do you think the punishment fits the crime? Is that enough?
No, we should, I could see taking all his money. I don't think anybody belongs for 20 years in a government cage. I think that's, I think it's a terrible thing. As you mentioned, earlier about the corruption in the Baltimore prisons, and of course, prisons are all full of criminals. I don't want to shock anybody about that either. And all terrible things go on there. So to put somebody for 20 years in prison, I think that's just an outrageous sentence. But the U.S., of course, is the prison capital of the world. It's the gulag capital of the world. We have far more people in prison per capita than any other country in the world. And the sentences are getting longer and longer because there's a prison industrial complex of corporatist businesses in connection with government. They're all making a lot of dough off putting people in cages. It's a terrible thing, and that's what we ought to be concerned about. And if we're concerned about government corruption, we have to reduce the size of government. You can't actually change the zebra's stripes. You just can make the zebra smaller, though. That's what we ought to concentrate on.
Right, and the prison issue is a whole other issue that we don't even have time to get to today. But how do we get corruption out of politics? You mentioned limited governments. What else would you
Well, I mean, I think my guess, you can't get corruption out of government. I mean, maybe once in a while there's some good person in government. Ron Paul, you mentioned earlier, he's an example. Maybe Thomas Jefferson didn't take any bribes either, or George Washington, or whatever. But with the government the size that it is, they put the slops into the pig trough and then are horrified that the pigs come up and eat. So there's all these programs, all this spending. When you have trillions and trillions of dollars being taken from some group of people, given to other groups, and when just changing a few words in a government document can give you $1 billion or take away $1 billion from you, of course there's going to be corruption. I mean, the idea that you can have government without corruption is entirely utopian and makes us think about the wrong sort of things. What we ought to think about, again, is cutting back the government. The government is strangling us. They're surveilling us. They're killing people all over the world. They're running hate campaigns against Russia over the Olympics, right? We can go down many of the things they're doing. and they're all evil. So you can't get rid of, can you get rid of evil? I mean, the devil exists, but we certainly can cut down on the evil. Maybe we can make the devil a little bit shorter and less powerful.
Great. Thank you so much. That was Lew Rockwell, the founder and chairman of the Mises Institute.